Jaya Radha Madhava Punya Vihari.
Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Welcome to Books Are the Basis. This is the Books Are the Basis week 2023. And our topic is Shastra Chakshu, looking at the world through the eyes of Srila Prabhupada's books. And our special guest today is His Grace Akhandadhi Prabhu. Hare Krishna Prabhu. Wonderful to have you with us. Akhandadhi Prabhu was born in Belfast in Ireland, where he first met the devotees in 73. And then he studied architecture at the Bristol University and joined, after 2 years, joined the Bhaktivedanta Manor in England, where he in 1975 received initiation from Srila Prabhupada and then served in various ways at the Bhaktivedanta Manor for many, many years as book distributor, in charge of the life membership, and then later also became the temple president of the Bhaktivedanta Manor, served in that role for 14 years, from 82 to 95. That was also during the time when there was the campaign to save the temple from closure by the British government. So did a very important service during all these years at the manor. Then later in the mid-90s moved to Wales, where he developed a rural community and also was instrumental to gather support to found and the purchase of Buckland Hall, which develops as the largest retreat center in the UK. And also Prabhu has sat on various interfaith, educational and media advisory bodies in the UK. And also for over 30 years has, I think, made over 500 scripted presentations for the BBC, especially in the morning program. And currently serves as a director of the Science and Philosophy Initiative in the UK, and also as the director of the Bhaktivedanta Institute for Higher Studies in Gainesville, the US. So we are very pleased and grateful to have your association today. And as we will see, especially for our topic today, I think we have the perfect speaker on this subject, because today we like to look at artificial intelligence. We said Shastra Chakshu. It means we're looking at topics of today's world, relevant topics, and then we want to see what understanding we can get from Srila Prabhupada's books. And at the moment, many people, everyone talks about artificial intelligence, and we like to cover this a little bit, this topic. And I guess it makes sense to start with some introductory questions just to make sure that we're all on the same page. And then we want to go into the Vedic perspective or what Prabhupada books can tell us. So maybe start with what is artificial intelligence and how does it work? If you can briefly explain just.
Well, first of all, thank you very much, Krishna Prabhu. This project of Shastra Chakshus is very important. The more we can delve into Srila Prabhupada's books and understand the world through them, the happier and more enlightened we will be, and more equipped to help others. So you're quite right, and thank you for bringing up this topic of artificial intelligence. It is one of the more bewildering aspects of what modern science has got up to. We're all bewildered by various technologies and things like that, but artificial intelligence contains an extra bit of deception because it's called artificial intelligence. What do we mean by intelligence? Well, often this is indicated as the precursor to sentience, to actual awareness. So people believe that we've got artificial intelligence, which originally set out to mimic the human mind. It's a way of developing the sort of formula and more complex algorithms, ways of analyzing data, so that we try and do it in a way that mimics how the human mind copes with so much data that is flowing into it. Particularly, the senses are loading up the brain with information about the world, and the brain has to process this. Now, the artificial intelligence doesn't actually try to copy the way the brain does it, because we're not actually sure on those matters. We scientists usually model artificial intelligence on how they think the mind processes different concepts, language issues, meaning, and so on in different kind of categories of overlays. So it tends to copy that. And their idea is that it's developing so wonderfully, sooner or later, we're going to have consciousness. Now, how do they think they can determine that? And a lot of it is their philosophical naivety. They don't understand the nature of consciousness, because the standard scientific model for consciousness is that it is just something that emerges from the brain. Now, there is absolutely no evidence and no theory even to explain how the nature of consciousness emerges from the brain. And in this case, we have to go back to thinking, well, what is consciousness?
Right.
And we have to understand it in its different components. And for us, consciousness is the entity, the source of the ability to ascertain our own existence and to have experiences. We are the experiencer entity. That is our understanding of consciousness. Now, the standard way for even the top minds in philosophy and neuroscience to look at consciousness is as the conscious event, the thing we are conscious of. And for us, that's in the category of mind. And we see a difference between consciousness as the experiencer and mental stuff as the stuff we experience. That is a big distinguishing thing. One philosopher I discussed this with at a recent conference in New York, explained that he saw it as the inner light and the illuminated room, as his way of distinguishing those two factors. Now, they still think that and this is the unbelievable bit, they talk about there must be this inner light that experiences stuff, and the illuminated room is what we experience. So where does the inner light come from? Oh, that's just a facet of the illuminated room. So the light bulb is a product of a room that's lit up. It makes no sense whatsoever. That is the insanity of modern education. That people think they can get away with that type of logic and intellectual simplicity and foolishness. So this is just the first point, that being equipped with the philosophical insights that Srila Prabhupada is giving us in terms of the nature of consciousness, mind, and the world and the body and brain, we can actually see things very clearly. I came away from this conference of the Association for the Scientific Study for Consciousness, 700 delegates, top neuroscientists, top philosophers that we all know the names of, attending this. And I thought, yeah, we actually know what we're talking about. And none of these folk have a clue. They're in the dark. And they're in the dark simply because they are wedded, they are committed to this idea that they can find an explanation for our existence and for consciousness from looking at just what the brain does. They know they're nowhere near it. They know that the more they look, it raises bigger questions, but still, they won't take higher knowledge. And this is the subject in which they require to take higher knowledge. So we are not against pratyaksha. We are not against anumana, but they need to be combined with the insights of Shastra so that we can understand Shastra well and we can understand what we're observing in this world. We can piece the whole picture together. That's what Srila Prabhupada's books are doing for us. Now, back to artificial intelligence. Once we understand what consciousness is, you cannot believe that anything that is basically data processing becomes sentient, because our brain is not sentient. Even our mind is not sentient. Both the brain and mind process information in different ways. The brain is processing information from the senses in terms of electrical activities and patterns. And it's wonderful. You can actually you can study a person's brain and actually match up the patterns with something they have reported seeing. And there's a sort of brain reading that you can do. And there's going to be a lot more examples of that. I was studying a paper on recreating music from looking at people's brain activity. And you could figure out what genre and even replay the music. But that's not, there's a cheat there. It's like saying, if I show you this picture of a cat, put a card down, 1, 2, 3, or 4, right? And if you put 3 down, the 3 represents the cat. So AI can say, oh, I see the 3, therefore you must have seen a cat. That's all there is to that trick. It's not telling you that consciousness can be recreated or that the experience can be recreated. So the brain processes material stuff in that way, and the mind processes sensory data in another way. And that is described in the Shastra, particularly in the Srimad Bhagavatam, how the mind travels out through the senses and gathers the guna qualities that are present in the tan matras within any object. Every object is made of physical elements, earth, water, fire, air, ether, and these are functional elements, not chemical elements, not physics elements. They are qualitative, sensory, functional elements. So the mind can gather those aspects and bring it back into itself and offer a picture, a taste, a smell, a touch, a sound for the Atma to experience. And that is the only explanation that matches the science. The interesting thing is that none of the neuroscience matches what we experience. But we know we experience it. The experience is real. And our ability to experience, we are sentient beings. No one can deny consciousness and what we are conscious of. But you cannot match up what we are conscious of and why we are conscious with what we see the brain doing. There has to be more to it. And that more is described in Srila Prabhupada's books.
It's interesting that I saw recently there was a BBC News article that says, artificial intelligence creator must study consciousness, expert warns. They said there was an open letter signed by dozens of academics from around the world, calls on artificial intelligence developers to learn about consciousness as artificial intelligence becomes more and more advanced. So it's interesting that somehow they realize that they need to understand more about consciousness. So basically, Srila Prabhupada's books would be the best place to start with, right?
I think they're going to be disappointed because what they think they're going to study in consciousness are the processes by which mind processes stuff.
Yeah. Okay.
Hierarchy of systems that the mind uses. And there's loads of books on this, and there's loads of different systems and analysis and ways of psychologically mapping out the process by which, for instance, decision-making arises, And in many ways, the mind, as described in the Bhagavatam, is a sort of artificial consciousness.
That's interesting.
Probably the best way to think of mana and its function, mana, buddhi, and ahankara, is as artificial consciousness. Because that's what it's intended for. The system of the material world is set up so that the Atma forgets its identity as an individual spiritual being capable of interacting with Krishna and all his devotees, playing in the Leela, manifesting services just by intention, doing all sorts of wonderful things just by our own volition. Things happen in the spiritual world, all facilitated by Krishna's internal potency. Now, when we decide to leave that and think we're going to play in the material world, it's not the internal potency that is arranging for things to happen, in service to Krishna. It's the external energy who is allowing us to think we are controlling and creating things for our pleasure. And she does that by generating a world by which we understand that world through what the mind gathers. And basically, the mind is gathering all these experiences and presenting it to us. And we think that is us there. That is my experience. And not only do I see my experience in there, I see myself. I have this concept of myself as the ahankara experiencing those things. And I become lost in the artificial consciousness of these subtle elements. It's so tricky, but it's an incredibly clever system that Krishna has set up. So the processes of our subtle mind and those subtle elements are mimicking real consciousness. They're the perfected reflection of real consciousness. But they're inert, they're unsentient. I think it's Baladev Vidyabhushan who makes this statement that mind is almost sentient. It's not, but it's almost. It's so close to our own sentience that we become bewildered by it.
You're kind of in the illusion that it is that.
Yeah, you can't be fooled by an illusion which doesn't look like close to the real thing. It's got to look close to the real thing. And mind does. And for most people, artificial intelligence looks like the real thing. Like that operator at Google, who was playing with I think it was the early forms of ChatGPT, and convinced it was sentient because it told him, I don't want to die. But, it doesn't take, a chat program long to know how to respond to a human if you want to appear to be conscious, because it's there in all the films and the books and the papers. They can suddenly research it. Every response it can give us is already out there. When ChatGPT first came out, I had to do a piece for the BBC, and it was one of the thought for the day. So it was meant to be on a very topical subject and give a theological take on it. So ChatGPT had just been launched that week, and there was a lot of fuss in the news about it. So I thought, perfect. So I called the producer and said, hey, I've got this idea. Why don't I get ChatGPT to write the script that I'm going to give that day on the ethical and spiritual values of, AI and ChatGPT, and do it in the style of Akhandadhi, speaking on Thought for the Day for BBC radio. And he thought, no, that's too far. You can't do that. I'd already done it. At least I'd already got the script. And it was interesting. It quoted from Bhagavad Gita, as I asked it to. It gave some interesting points. And it even quoted a line which I thought, I could have said that. Then I realized I probably have said that. It's the sort of thing I would have included in another script. So it was just copying and pasting in such a way that it gets the positive result. That's all that ChatGPT does. It's a copy and paste. And there's been a lot of analysis on that in recent times. telling us that really that's all it's doing. But it's getting human feedback and just gets better and better at producing an answer which you go, well, that sounds reasonable. It's not consciousness.
But it's interesting.
It's not even mind.
Some people are actually concerned that will AI ever become sentient and will it ever happen? But I mean, from our understanding, this is like impossible, right?
It is impossible for a data processing, a mechanistic data processing system to become actually sentient. Once you understand what sentience is and how it's caused, that's not the problem, actually. AI can be, it doesn't require AI to be sentient for them to become our overlords. They're going to be running the planet, if not already. They're going to be making life and death situation. A few years ago, we had a workshop with the interaction of religious leaders and top AI experts in the UK. We had people from the Turing Institute, the Leverhulme, Cambridge University, the guy who's running DeepMind now. These are the top names. And they gave various presentations. And we were asked, do you think AI should be allowed to make life and death decisions? And you kind of think, well, how can AI, who doesn't understand life or death, make a life or death decision? So you kind of think, no, that doesn't sound right. And they just said, it's already happening. For instance, if you call for an emergency, accident or health thing, and you go through to the ambulance, who assigns which ambulance goes where if there's high demand and not enough ambulances? Who decides that?
AI.
It's AI. Because they say it's better than humans. The humans, the louder you shout and the more you cry, the more likely you are to get an ambulance. But it may not be as important as someone else who's got a heart attack who's just going, oh, please help me, So they think AI can make better decisions on those sort of matters. So that's life and death. And we hope it gets it right. The trouble is, and we don't need to get into the frailties of AI decision-making because that's a whole topic on itself. The biases that come in, that many of the facial recognition things will recognize Caucasian faces, but not ethnic faces, Asian or Black American. So, there's all sorts of problems like that. Or they won't recommend a woman for a job. They look through the CVs and they cut out all the women. Why? Because in the past, women haven't done that job. And they've only seen men do that job, so therefore you must only need men. AI is really stupid when it comes to decision-making. And we're never clear on what basis AI makes decisions. This was something, again, was pointed out to us by the AI experts, because we were saying, oh, there should be transparency in how decisions are made. AI doesn't work like that. It's a black box, meaning you have no idea how it came to its conclusions. For instance, in one situation, there was diagnosis of scans and X-rays for cancer. And they found that, the AI diagnosis was scoring well, but they wondered on what basis it was making its decision. And somehow in this situation, they were testing different parameters. And they found out that the reason that there was a lot of false positives with this AI one. And the reason there was false positives is the AI seemed to be making the decision that if a doctor sends a scan to see and ask the question, does this patient have cancer? The AI assumes the doctor is thinking there's more likelihood that it has than it hasn't, because otherwise he wouldn't be sending it for analysis. So you get all this craziness built into the system. And how you ultimately analyze this, is an ethical problem. You cannot separate what science does at any level, in the past, present, or the future, without having an ethical overlay. We have to look at things and say, is this right? Is this fair? Is this true? Is this valid? Is this what we want to do? And the difficulty is we are handing over our world to kind of mechanistic systems, and we're losing sight of the human ethical, moral, spiritual stance. So again, this calls for our movement, using Srila Prabhupada's literature, using Srila Prabhupada's knowledge that he has provided for us to give guidance on the questions that need to be asked and the challenges that need to be made. Now, back to AI becoming our overlords. The AI will become quicker and better at making decision-making than most humans. Doesn't mean it's always right, doesn't mean it's fair, doesn't mean it's proper, but they're going to become better and better at it. So there's no question they will take jobs. AI is now writing coding. And that means that we're not even sure what's behind the coding that it's writing. What is its purpose? What is its question? And it doesn't require AI to be conscious to be dangerous for humans. This was made very clear to us by Bengio, Professor Bengio from, I can't remember where he's based in America, gave a lecture at that conference in New York. And he explained all it takes for AI to become almost an enemy of humanity is for AI to program its self-preservation. Now, that's not a big step, to program in self-preservation. But as soon as AI programs its self-preservation as a priority, it is now making decisions for its benefit, not ours. And he says, that's when it becomes very dangerous to humanity. And it wouldn't be difficult for AI if you asked it the question, you know, please implement a strategy for clearing up climate change. Oh, that's a dead easy one. You want to clear up, you know, all danger for climate change? I would get rid of the worst species on the planet. You know, wipe out the humans. You know what they say? That if every insect disappeared, and we're killing them off at huge levels, if every insect disappears, within 50 years, all life on Earth stops.
Wow.
If you got rid of all the humans, in 50 years, all life on Earth would thrive. We are a blight on this planet because of our craziness. And it's because of the scientific implementation. We're always told that science will solve the problems, but science has been the problem. Or it's because humans don't know how to deal with material ability and powers. And technology and science is just giving us powers that we have no moral instinct or guidance to cope with. That's our problem. And every time humanity has introduced new technology, it does it that the next 100 years it spends clearing it up, you know? And God knows how we're ever going to clear up the mess that AI is going to make. So it's said that AI are belief-generating machines, meaning this. This is how one philosopher suggested we regard AI. It generates ideas or proposed solutions. And the question is, do you want to believe in them? So whatever AI comes up with, you have to ask that question, do I want to believe in this? That's what it's mean by they are belief-making machines. They generate things for you to believe in, possibly. And we have to equip humanity with the ability to say, I believe in this or I don't. This could be beneficial, this could be progressive, this is a step too far. And we've always got to remember Prahlad Maharaj's worry that the remedies are far worse than the original problems. Generally, the remedies that materialistic people come up with to solve their problems make things even far, far worse. And however we think AI and that type of technology is going to help us, it's such a mess. It's difficult. But no, it will not. Your question was, will it become conscious? No. Will it become our overlord? Probably. Will it cause havoc? Yes.
So what would you say, how could Srila Prabhupada Books, Prabhupada's teachings kind of, I mean, you raised an important point that technology is advancing very fast, but people are maybe not equipped to have the proper understanding of ethic, moral, understanding what is right, what is wrong. So could we say that by spreading the teaching of Srila Prabhupada, at least people can sharpen their intelligence and their discrimination, that they hopefully understand what is good, what is bad. At least that could be something that could be beneficial for people.
I think exactly that. We are in a very fortunate position. When we had met with that religious group, it was very clear that the religionists had no anything to offer on that. And we had another group which was dealing with the environment and very little to offer on that, really, other than, we try and get our communities to behave better, which is a good one. But Srila Prabhupada has offered us a guidance for society. And he talks about this at the beginning of the Bhagavatam, all the progress that is there, from science and, technology, all the progress is there. Somehow or other, society is developed. But there is a pinprick. In fact, it's a lot bigger than a pinprick. It's a nail in the coffin, actually, that's there in society. That's, causing anxiety and problems. And society is basically rudderless. And as long as people just think, I am this body, I have this one life, I am here to maximize sense gratification, they cannot make the adjustments in their behavior that will make them happy on a small scale, and they cannot adjust societal activities that will even protect the planet. They cannot create equality for others, or at least equality in the sense that everyone is well looked after. So it's the mentality that is wrong. And the majority of the population are really nice beings. They've had some good fortune to become human beings at a particular time in the history, 500 years after Lord Chaitanya's appeared, just after Srila Prabhupada. So we've got to look out at the world and see that there's a lot of nice people, but they've just been fed such dangerous propaganda in the name of materialism, in the name of that you're just this body, there is nothing else but the physical world, in the name of their education. It's outrageous what they've been fed. But I personally believe that, and I put a figure to it, I think something like 70% of the population, and I think it could be more, 70% have an inkling that there's more to life than just birth to death. And that's it. There's nothing else but the physical. I think they have an inkling. But if they're asked about it amongst their friends, when they meet people, they're just going to spout the same old stuff. Yes, brain consciousness, yes, life from matter, evolution, yes, Big Bang, that's it. That's all there is, because they think that's the intellectual point of view. And what Krishna consciousness has is intellectual ethics. It has ethics, morality, and wisdom, which is intellectually rigorous. I question how much other religions have of that. But the stock that we have of intellectual ethics and wisdom and vision is huge. And Srila Prabhupada's books, are the essence of all of that. We can appeal, and this is what Prabhupada wanted. We appeal to the intellectual people. Now, there's lots of people in academia, and I've met many of them, who are not going to change. But there's lots of other intelligent people who do have ability to change things. And the new generation coming up, I think, have a different view. There's a saying in science that things don't change until the old scientists die off, because they never change their stance. And in fact, there's a specific quote by a scientist, philosopher called Daniel Kahneman, who makes that point specifically. People do not change their minds. And I saw that, when we had one of the programs at the conference. It was an analysis of two different theories. Global workspace theory and integrated information theory are both theories about where consciousness is, how it's processed within the brain. And they were being tested by other universities. Now, both the advocates for global workspace and integrated information theory had agreed on the predictions that they were saying should happen. And they'd agreed on the experiments that would be used to test that, and they agreed on the universities that were going to adjudicate all of this. And when both were found not to give completely correct predictions, both complained, oh, I think it's the methodology that was used. They're not going to accept that their theory needs changing. People don't do that. So we're going to have to work from the ground up on this. Find the young people, get to them in their education, in the universities, meet them wherever. There's a lot of people out there who want a new way of thinking about things, but they need to know that they're accepting this new ethics and morality, not on the basis of traditional faith, something being passed down. This is what you have to do because this is what our book says, this is what our religion says, this is why you do it. That's not going to go anywhere with Generation Z and others. I know it didn't work for me. I didn't join a religion like that. I joined a spiritual movement where I saw this has wisdom. This is equipping us for making the decisions about how I want to live my life and how I think I can contribute to the world in a positive way, thanks to this knowledge. So we have to appreciate, if we don't do by now, that we are the custodians of the most incredible wisdom on the planet. And we have to become much more expert at disseminating it. And in order to do that, I think we have to study Prabhupada's books more carefully. Now, I see, and this is, I think, is a really good thing. Many devotees have a very good broad understanding, and I think that's needed in the early stages. Many then go back and try to focus on different aspects. I have devotee friends who are studying ecological things, cow protection, varnashram, and others, of course, in the different scientific fields, cosmology. I pick up on anything to do with physics and consciousness, and I love that stuff, and it's all there. It's all there in Prabhupada's books. But you actually were giving a class, wasn't it, talking about the conversations? Was it your class, or maybe it was one other group, I'm afraid. Sorry. There was a discussion in the Zurich temple about how Bhagavatam is set up with conversations. Maybe it was Keshav Swami. And another devotee asked a question which I think resonated with many of us. Yes, but I like to understand things structurally. I need to understand, how things are laid out, And the Bhagavatam isn't set up like that. And it's true, it's not. Because the Bhagavatam's prime purpose is to help us understand our relationship with Krishna and how Krishna is everything and looking after us, and how surrender to Krishna is our happy position. So it gives us all that in a very structured way. But for me, I often giving talks and people say, oh, where can I read about that in the Bhagavatam? And I go, yes, well, there's it's dotted throughout. So I think this now is a responsibility of many of our devotees, that as well as understanding the overall flow of Bhagavatam for our personal spiritual benefit, and also for explaining that to others, we need to also help devotees who like things categorized, who like to know how things are put together. And the Atma Paradigm series that we did a couple of years back was inclined to do that. I could not show you a section of Bhagavatam that, even equated to one lecture, because every lecture was made up of bits and pieces, brought together. Now, we have to be very careful in doing that, because in order to do that, we have to be aware of the overall message and siddhanta, so that we're not selectively picking out things that we like. And when we do this research, we actually have to accept the things that, oh, that seems to disagree with what I thought was that fitted in. But actually, the Bhagavatam contains no contradictions. That's the amazing thing. You just have to understand what is the context of this and what is the context of that. And actually, the truth will always be the addition of those 2 points, not rejecting one and accepting the other. And that requires a little detachment and a willingness to be humble and think, actually, the idea I have at this moment may not be the full picture. And it won't be. We can guarantee none of us have the full picture at this stage. And we have to be willing to discuss. I was reading this point and I think this means such and such. We have to discuss this with other devotees. And we have to be willing for them to say, no, don't think so. I don't think that's quite right, because I don't think you've considered this, and this, So that's Sangha. We study Prabhupada's books carefully, openly, humbly, with a detached point of view, and we allow ourselves to discuss them and be enlightened by others' points of view. So very important. And then we may be getting a little qualification for helping to synthesize certain aspects that can then be presented. But with the Atma Paradigm, would I even stand by every single word I said in that 3 years later? No. Afraid no. I think I know that I read Prabhupada's books and thought, ooh, actually, that's a clearer point. That's a better understanding. That's helped to clarify something which I may have presented in a slightly skewed way. So it has to be redone. Don't want to put off anyone who still likes it. It's still got a lot of good stuff. But, we have a long way to go to really uncover the full mine of jewels that are in Prabhupada's books.
Thank you so much, Prabhu, for so expertly and beautifully explaining the defaults and the mistakes of modern science and their understanding of artificial intelligence or intelligence, consciousness in general, and also pointing out how Srila Prabhupada's books in so many ways actually give us a key or have such an amazing knowledge to understand reality in a different way, or in a perfect way, in a sense. Is there any you'd like to address in regards to our discussion? Any other aspects before we come to a closure of this discussion, or any final points?
I think we've covered artificial intelligence as we can. Part of the difficulty I think I have in presenting this amongst devotees is that we have various parts of the Bhagavatam which are the Sankhya aspects. Mm-hmm. And we've been quite good at writing down, oh, this comes from this and this comes from this, in terms of the sequence of manifestation, but not really thinking about what any of that means. What each of the elements actually, what is the Tanmatra of sound? What is the earth element? Bhumi, what is it? And I think often I find that there is a certain naive realism which devotees bring to their reading of Srimad Bhagavatam. Naive realism is a broad philosophical topic or a concept. The idea that we kind of believe that the world is exactly as I think it is, in that it's hard, big, stuff in front of me, this is all hard stuff and it's made of atoms and molecules and the chemistry, and all that sort of stuff. We kind of have that. And Bhagavatam is much more subtle than that. And it has a different metaphysical understanding of the world and how it's constituted and how it works. And it's actually brilliant. I spend a lot of time talking with physicists about these aspects of our metaphysics, because I believe that it's the way modern physics is working, it's starting to kind of appreciate that the kind of realism that it thought about the world isn't quite the way to understand how it works. And this links in with the fact that ultimately we only experience the world through the mind. We have no actual contact with the external world. My hand may touch something. I may think I've got contact, but all that I'm getting is that electrical signal is passing up my arm to my brain. And the mind is reading that as a touch feeling. Therefore, I think something's out there. And same, but I'm seeing something. Okay, but that's only because light has gone into my eyes, sent an electrical signal, and the mind has generated a picture. And there is no way science can explain how I'm experiencing a picture of the world from what is happening in electromagnetic waves and in electrical activity in my brain. The two don't. So, but I've got a picture. I've got a sense of this reality. Now, we're not saying there's not something out there, but to think that it's exactly what you think it is, that's the snake in the rope. And therefore, when you read the Srimad Bhagavatam particularly, when you read different aspects, don't bring that naive realism and think, oh, that doesn't compute with the way I thought things were. You have to be willing to understand that you are entering a new type of metaphysics. And this new type of metaphysics is so brilliant that honestly, we got physicists to look at it and think, wow, that actually could be the way of explaining the whole nature of matter. It's a much different way of looking at what matter is, how it manifests. And one particular analogy which we've used on the scientific Saturdays is this idea that ultimately the Atma is experiencing a kind of virtual reality game. That's really how we're experiencing. Just as a gamer might go on, take on an avatar and start interacting with others and think that that interaction is real and that what they are seeing and what they're doing in the environment they're in is real, but actually it's just on a screen. And really all that's behind it is digits. The screen is the illusory bit, the reality is the digits. And similarly, behind the reality of what we think is the picture, the touches, the smells, is a set of paramanus, Vedic, Bhagavatam atoms, paramanus, in which are manifesting the different tanmatras inhered in the elements, and all defined according to the combination of the different gunas. and you can explain the whole of existence with the model of the Bhagavatam. So the one thing that I think modern technology has offered us, and it's nothing to do with, okay, I've got a great mobile phone, or I can, do the internet. The real thing that the modern technology has offered us is new analogies that can help us explain the reality of the conditioned soul stuck in a material world. And I think it's important, if I like devotees to really think about that virtual game thing, and how there are so many aspects of how I can believe I am part of this, but in reality, it's just digits operating behind the scenes. And when you start to underappreciate that I'm bewildered by it, I think there's shapes, I think there's activities, I think I'm in there, I've given myself over to that avatar. We can see how easy it is for the soul to be part of this virtual reality game that Maya has set up for us to play in. So that's an important aspect, I think. Devotees, do not be bewildered by when you think you've got contradictions or there's difficulties in something that the Bhagavatam says in terms of reality and fifth canto, all that stuff. It's simply we haven't studied our metaphysics deeply enough. Because when we came to those sections in the second and third cantos, we go, yeah, we got that, what's the next pastime, So, and if there are contradictions and things that you can't resolve, you park them. You may not be able to resolve them in your mind now, you may not be equipped for it, park it. As you read on, as you go to a class, as you discuss with a devotee, magic happens, and those questions become answered.
Yeah, fascinating. I just reminded of, actually, even Bhaktivinoda Thakur already spoke about how this material world is like a magical display. Bhaktivinoda Thakur used this word even at that time. So what to speak of nowadays? As you said,
yes.
We have much more experience of that in the sense of the technology that gives us this.
Yes, Prabhupada uses cinematography.
Yeah, right.
This is a cinematographic kind of illusion. So we have new ones, which I think they're even more potent in their illusory power.
Mm-hmm.
But thank you very much, Krishna Prema Rupa. This is a wonderful project that you're involved with. Thank you for your intelligent questions, and sharp analysis.
My job was not so difficult. You spoke so brilliantly on so many different aspects. And we do hope that devotees, get a feeling of or an inspiration to understand how much wisdom, how much knowledge actually is there in Srila Prabhupada's books. And therefore, as you suggested, devotees should really be eager to go deeper into study and understanding of what Prabhupada gave us.
And if I could just do a final little plug. We embarked on the Atma paradigm many, many years back, and it was years in development with discussions with devotees from different fields, biology, physics, consciousness, neuroscience, all the different fields. So it manifested as this 35-part series, which is on YouTube. Mm-hmm. And I would encourage devotees, if they have an interest in how the big questions of consciousness, life, matter, the universe, and all these things, how they actually work, please go on YouTube, just type in Akhandadhi, but that's often hard to spell, or Atma paradigm, and it'll come up. Now, I'll just mention that what we tried to do there was an intellectual exercise, that it is absolutely based on Bhagavatam. But what I tried to do was build it up from only using scientific evidence that is accepted in universities. There's a few other little stories, but basically the evidence is pratyaksha. But showing that when you apply good pramana, good anumana to that, to good philosophical logic, it naturally that evidence leads to this, leads to this, leads to this. And you can build up from the first point of I exist as the foundation for all philosophy. I know I exist, right? And we can build up from there all the way up. You can't quite get the revelation of Radha and Krishna, but at least you can understand that there's a good chance that the absolute is sentient, is personal, and is a reflection of, that this world is a reflection of that reality. You can get almost all the way. But the only way we can piece together that building up is because we have accepted Shabda. We have accepted the conclusions of the Bhagavatam, which have guided us at each point.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. We can include the link also in our discussion.
Oh, that'd be nice. Thank you.
And of course, we are grateful to His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada, that gave us all these scriptures, the Bhagavatam, and in this way helped us to get these deeper insights. Thank you so much, Akhandadhi Prabhu, for sharing your very deep insights into this topic. And hopefully devotees will be fired up to study more on these subject matters. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Glory to Prabhupada.
Prabhupada ki jai.
Hi, Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai.
Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare.